This is Late Night Mysteries, where truth hides in darkness and every story leaves a mark. The city of Graybridge was a monument to progress. Its skyline shimmered with silver towers and sprawling laboratories, the corporate empire of Novacore Industries looming above all. To most, Novacore represented the future miracles in medicine, technology, and human evolution. To Victor Hale, a quiet man in his early 30s working odd jobs just to keep the lights on, Novacore represented opportunity. He had no family left, no prospects, and little to lose. When he saw the ad volunteers needed for experimental breakthrough in human physiology, generous compensation, he thought it was his chance to finally matter, to finally contribute to something greater than himself. The lab where Victor signed his life away was sterile, gleaming, and cold. White walls reflected the glow of screens and glass tubes filled with glowing liquid. The scientists wore their crisp lab coats like armor, speaking in jargon he could barely follow. Still, he forced a smile, telling himself this was the first step to a better life. The lead researcher, Dr. Karen Fallow, assured him that the serum was safe, a revolution in human perception. Victor swallowed his nerves as the glowing injection slid into his veins. At first he felt warmth, then tingling. Then his body convulsed violently, thrashing against the restraints as his vision fractured into bursts of color. He screamed for help, but the voices around him were panicked, not supportive. His heart seized, his breath rattled. Then silence. His body fell limp, the monitors flatlined. The scientists stood frozen in shock. Then Dr. Fallow barked orders. Erase everything, lock it down, no records, controlled loss. They wheeled Victor's corpse into cold storage, treating him like nothing more than spoiled material. Novacore moved on, but Victor did not stay dead. He awoke in the darkness of the storage chamber. He sat up and realized his body was gone. His hands, his arms, his reflection were missing. He was invisible. At first, panic overtook him. He stumbled through the lab, unseen, unheard, listening to the whispers of the scientists as they tried to bury his existence. Slowly, panic hardened into rage. They had killed him, discarded him, erased him. He would erase them in return. Victor's vengeance began with Dr. Fallow. Alone in her office one night, she noticed her pen rolling across the desk by itself, papers scattered as if caught in a phantom wind. Her computer blinked to life, playing security footage of Victor's violent death on repeat. His voice whispered in her ear, "You left me to die." Terrified, she scrambled for the door, but it slammed shut. A scalpel lifted from her drawer, glinting in the dim light. It pressed against her throat. She screamed, the blade slashed deep, crimson spilling across her lab coat as she collapsed, choking on her own blood. Victor stood unseen, savoring her terror as the light drained from her eyes. Dr. Amos Heller was next. Victor followed him home, silent and patient. Heller poured himself a drink, but the stereo blared static by itself. "You watched me die," Victor's voice hissed through the noise. The lights cut out. In the darkness, invisible hands clamped around Heller's throat. He thrashed, clawing at the air as his face turned purple. With a final wrench, Victor snapped his neck, dropping his lifeless body onto shards of glass. The killings escalated. Dr. Lena Cho, locked inside a chamber, suffocated as Victor flooded it with nitrogen gas. Her fists pounded the glass until they stilled forever. Dr. Marcus Vale, cornered in the chemical wing, burned alive as Victor overturned volatile compounds and watched the fire consume him. One by one, those who had stood by during his death fell in grotesque displays of terror, but Victor did not stop at scientists. Guards who had dragged his corpse to storage were found with throats slit, their blood pooling beneath their posts. Executives who had signed off on the experiment died in locked boardrooms. One drowned in his own office sink, another impaled by shattered glass windows that exploded inward with invisible force. Novacore became a graveyard, its halls haunted by a phantom of its own creation. Finally, Victor saved the man he hated most for last, Edmund Riker, the CEO who had deemed Victor's death an acceptable margin of error. Victor slaughtered his guards in silence, bones breaking, blades slicing, bodies dragged into the shadows. When Riker realized he was alone, panic overtook him. "You made me," Victor whispered in the dark. Pipes ruptured, sparks rained from the ceiling. Machinery screamed as if the building itself sought vengeance. Riker ran, but invisible hands shoved him to the floor. A jagged shard of glass floated inches from his face. He begged for mercy, sobbing, but Victor only leaned closer, savoring the fear. The shard pierced Riker's skull, silencing him forever. Victor stood among the corpses, triumphant. He had won. Or so he thought. A voice broke the silence. No, Victor, you didn't win. From the shadows stepped Dr. Elias Venn, a quiet senior researcher who had hidden during the chaos. In his trembling hands, he held a sleek, glowing device pulsing with blue light. Victor circled him invisibly, amused. You stayed behind to die with the others? Elias shook his head. I stayed to end you. He pressed a switch. Agony ripped through Victor's unseen form. His body flickered in and out of existence, spasming uncontrollably. What have you done? Victor roared. I found the failsafe, Elias said, voice steady. They built it into you from the start. You were never meant to last. All I had to do was trigger it. Victor thrashed, knocking over steel tables, shattering glass, sparks flying as he staggered toward Elias. I will tear you apart, he screamed. But Elias held firm. The device pulsed brighter, and Victor collapsed, writhing. For the first time since his rebirth, his body began to appear, his face flickering into sight, eyes wide with fury and terror. His skin cracked like burning paper, peeling into ash as his scream filled the lab. And then silence. Victor Hale was gone, scattered into dust. Elias stood shaking, clutching the device, surrounded by carnage. They made you a monster, he whispered. But even monsters can die. Novacore was destroyed, its sins would be buried in rubble and whispers, but in Graybridge the legend of Victor Hale would live on, not as a hero, not even as a man, but as the invisible ghost of vengeance who brought an empire to its knees, only to be undone in the end.